Hello, 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 and welcome to episode number 4 of Fast Casual, Landa's official podcast, brought to you live again today, Wednesday, the 12th of July, from right here in New York City. I'm Alex Mann, and I am your host of today's podcast.
Thanks. Carissa Santis. I'm the Chief Technology Officer for Brix Holdings. If you do not know, we have a portfolio of restaurant brands. As Alex mentioned, Pizza Jukebox, Friendly's Ice Cream, Red Mango Cafe, Smoothie Factory Plus Kitchen, Super Salad, Orange Leaf Frozen Yogurt, and we're looking to continue to grow and acquire. So lots of stuff going on, and I head up technology and digital for all of it.
Sweet, that's awesome. It's funny, heading up technology, revitalizing technology in these sort of really kind of established old brands. I mean, you just mentioned in the pre-production call that we're coming up to the anniversary of Friendly's, 88 years old this week, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah.
88
awesome.
years.
I mean, nuts. And so with you, and in particular in your role as CTO, I mean, obviously evolving technology in the sort of space is changing every single day. And you have these vast established brands like Friendly's that are, 88 years old. I'm curious, as we dive into this conversation about the technology, on a broad level, let's speak to what it takes to overhaul or kind of stand up new technology processes for a brand like Friendly's.
Yeah, for sure. So Friendly's, obviously we mentioned is almost 88 years old now. And they've had a couple of different, changes in ownership over the years. And I think that if you're in the Northeast, you're hard pressed to not know who Friendly's is, or have a story about how you used to go in after softball games, or, it was date night on Friday night, or it was your first job. I actually have vendors that I have that used to work at Friendly. So it's a pretty iconic brand. And they we're cutting edge with technology. Fun fact I like to throw out, they were the second customer installation of Micros Res 3700 back in 1996 when it debuted. And, at that point, it was cutting edge, right? It was technology, not printed paper receipts and all of that stuff. And unfortunately, just throughout the years and the changes in ownership and, the business struggles and, the economy and such, technology then took a backseat. They weren't kind of at that front edge anymore. And so when we acquired them a few years ago, I inherited technology that was the better part of 30 years old. And so, I had the task of, ensuring that, not only was the technology relevant and working, but that we were compliant across all the, various landscapes. And so we had a major overhaul. We had to completely gut out the infrastructure, back office, network, all of that. And then obviously upgrade the point of sale. And, that massive project, which in past experiences or, in talking to peers, something like that on average is about a 2-year experience, right? From start to finish to get to roll out. We have 130 plus locations in the Friendly's brand. And my small and mighty team were able to accomplish an amazing task in completely updating the infrastructure as well as the point of sale in less than a year. The bulk of that rollout was over a 4-month period. So very proud of the work that my team's done. A lot of great scalability now with our new point of sale, and just the network that we've set up and the infrastructure will allow us to continue to grow and to scale, to be able to add new technologies without, a 2-year waiting period of integrating and developing and all of those types of things. And most importantly, with our staff, right? Usually it's younger team members that work in restaurants. And to go from having this archaic piece of equipment that you'd be lucky if it worked to essentially an iPad that is seamless and does all of the things that your smartphone does, has really made us relevant with the team members that are working for us now. So very proud of that. Very daunting task. Not always the most glamorous, but definitely was needed to refresh that brand.
So I actually have a question. Sometimes we talk to restaurant groups and they've been around for a super long time, right? Like, and they have this kind of ingrained brand in the community. Sometimes I think when we go to these communities, like people don't even know it's a chain. They're like, oh, well, that's just my local, ice cream spot, or that's my local pizza place. And I hear time and time again, like, we are back in the Stone Age when it comes to technology, but we don't have the capacity to roll out like a bunch of new things all at once. And so a lot of groups might know that they're operating at like, below average efficiencies, but they're just not sure like where to start. So, I mean, I heard from what you were saying that the point of sale was really important. Is that like where you think that folks should be starting? Like, how do you think about sequencing?
So I think that's the normal spot to start, depending on kind of where you're at as a restaurant, right? There's a difference between many locations and a chain versus a single mom and pop, right? So if you have, a handful of restaurants, point of sale is obviously probably the starting place where you want to be. If you're enterprise and you have multiple, locations, it's got to be one step back, and you got to look at the network that supports that point of sale. Because if you're just one restaurant that has a couple of point of sales, or even just one, you don't need, massive infrastructure in the back. You just need, network security and all the basics. So I think it kind of depends on where you sit currently in whatever brand or company that it is you're working for. But one of the things that I always like to do, whenever I'm looking at technology or upgrading or trying different things is, I think in the future, how am I going to be able to scale this? Yes, I might only be a single store right now that is focusing on point of sale and building from there, but how is that going to look if maybe we do really great and then expand to 2, 3, 4, 5 locations? And so I, future proof and kind of think through that as well.
Awesome.
That makes sense.
And you'd mentioned as well, it's almost like a 2-year overhaul of like a 30-year tech stack. When it comes to like pitching that to an exec team that have been dealing with a tech stack like that for so long, how do you go about even creating sort of internal motivation, and making them realize that we need to make that next jump to like future-proofing the sort of technology stack?
Yeah, so I'm very fortunate where I am now. My CEO used to be a CIO, in a previous life, and he's done this type of stuff before. And so I very much had his support and help in, getting the board of directors and everybody else, on board, because obviously it wasn't an inexpensive endeavor, right? It was a significant capital investment. We're about 50% on the friendly side between franchise and company. So we have our own capital that we were investing there, but really it's painting that picture, right? What do we have now? What is it doing for us, and all of the limitations and things we can't do, versus making the investment, putting in the infrastructure and upgrading the technology. And this is what it will allow us to do. I had mentioned, 2 years to implement or integrate something new. If you were trying to work in a world where it's that 30-year-old technology versus the technology we have now, I could easily have somebody integrate into the API if we wanted to add something that was outside of our current stack in less than 2 months. Like, it's unbelievable. And so really that return on investment is kind of how I got us to where we needed to be to pull the trigger and say go.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's really awesome. I mean, look, we talk about that ourselves, even in our own stack, even though we're not necessarily been in like a physical type technology to change a restaurant. Like, we're very like, what's our ROI on this product? How are we thinking about, like, we spend money on this. When it comes to ads, for me, that's literally what I do. It's like, I spend money on X, what am I getting back for Y? And Vivian is very on top of that. But I think what would be interesting as well, you mentioned when we had our call there last week, and I think this might help add color as well, like contextualize the sort of like abstract what is adding in a whole new tech stack, which is, you mentioned in Friendlies, you were talking about like the business intelligence tools that like you are kind of using, like the sort of heat mapping and stuff like that. Do you want to paint us a picture of what that kind of like stack looks like in your new updated sort of Friendlies?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the other challenges that comes along with a brand that's 88 years old is a whole lot of restaurants that are really old too. We've probably got at least 2 dozen, 3 dozen maybe stores that are over 40 years old, like the physical building itself. And so, business and the needs of our customers have changed in the last 40 years. So the building of 40 years ago is not the building that we want or need now. And so as we're trying to conceptualize what that looks like for the customer and the consumer experience, we're utilizing cameras with BI and AI technology to help us guide through what that looks like. Is our new design going to work? If we put 2 or 3 different ones out there, we can track and see which ones are doing better than the others as far as efficiencies, customer flow. Is there any bottlenecks anywhere? How long are they dwelling? Is the marketing stuff that we have something they stop and look at and then therefore go buy? So that's allowing us to make some really data informed decisions. One of the things I always love to say, when it comes to being a restaurant operator, and I can say it because I was one myself, we're very much emotional, and we've been in the business and we run the business, and you're always making decisions and you're on the fly, and challenges come up and you just work through them. And so a lot of times we make decisions based on how we feel, and we're very emotional about those. But having the data to back it up to say, yes, you may feel that's not working, but look, all these people are, making it through in the allotted amount of time, or they're looking at that marketing stuff and then going and actually buying it. So what we're doing there is working, versus just, conversation or gut feeling, really is allowing us to make some really great decisions moving forward.
That's awesome. I know that, there's some interesting trends in the industry when it comes to like the within the four wall like movements. So, there are so many different touch points when you're engaging with the guest. So as soon as someone comes in, what are they faced with? Do you greet them? Like, how does that work? And then when they actually are looking at the menu, what are you putting on that menu? How are you ordering things? I think in the retail world, there's this whole art and science behind, what you put in the side aisle by the line, right? Because those are the add-ons that is going to help drive your margins. It's really interesting because there's been data that recently came out that order sizes of digital ordering have actually like increased like nearly like 1.5x the in-store order sizes, because you just have such a navigable menu. You can see pictures, you can double click, you can like learn more about what you're ordering. And then, obviously you have the suggestive selling where you put the things that everyone loves, and you have the ratings and all that stuff directly in the app or on the website. So is there anything that you guys are thinking about right now around, like, I know that you put out a new menu, so that's an exciting one, but anything that you guys are thinking about along these lines?
Yes, there's definitely lots of things, when it comes to that we're kind of looking at, both, digital facing the consumer as well as in restaurant. And so, kind of to your point where you can get so much more with the pictures and the add-ons and things like that. One of the models that we're testing, specifically on the Friendly side, is a little bit more of a fast casual versus a full sit-down table service model. And so we've got, at table ordering where you can do that from your own personal device. It's not, a kiosk or something sitting there. So being able to kind of put that together with the dining in experience versus just, online, we're seeing some benefits there. We're getting some of those upsells and suggestions that, yes, a server could do, but really we eat with our eyes, right? So when you can see all those pictures and the things like that, and literally when you're in a digital format, everything can have a picture. When you have a physical menu, everything, there's only certain things that you can get in there because you don't want to have a 200-page menu. So those are some of the things that we're kind of exploring that we're seeing some good results on thus far.
Awesome.
And I think it's interesting as well because you alluded to with another one of your brands in the last in our preparation meeting was Smoothie Factory, and you'd mentioned things about that, like these digital drive-throughs, but maybe not digital drive-throughs, and digital lockers. I'd never actually heard the phrase digital locker before as well, but like these seem like, I mean, when I see them in real life, I'm like, wow, that's cool. But like, that's like such innovation in these sorts of spaces. I mean, do you want to like, I mean, again, like how like kind of you decide like whether it's a digital drive-through or digital lockers and what they kind of are and how they're being innovative in and of themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. So, to your point, we have a Smoothie Factory plus kitchen that we're in process of building right now. And it's going to kind of be like our playground for some of that, testing and, does this work better than that? And so we've been kind of trying to determine, do we want to do a digital drive-through, which a lot of other brands out there are doing right now, where you just order from the mobile app or online, and then you drive through and pick up, versus a traditional drive-through where you order at a speaker or a window. And, we're probably divided 50-50 when it comes to the team here on if that's the right way to go versus a traditional drive-through, that if you can, get the folks through the line and make them their stuff and get them out the door, in a reasonable amount of time, that makes sense. And we see a lot of that in some of our traditional drive-through locations for the brand. And so that's part of where we're also going to add in those cameras I was talking about to give us that view, right? So right now, we might be starting with the digital format, and then based on the data that we get, we might add the boards in and make it a traditional versus digital only. And if we did traditional, then, you have to think about all the third parties and online ordering and delivery and all of that. Do you want to combine that together with your traditional drive-through? I know as a consumer, I don't want to wait behind 3 or 4 cars that are ordering at a drive-through just to pick up my order I've already placed. So we're looking at putting in, those food lockers that I had mentioned, temperature controlled, hot and cold. So we can keep our smoothies cold and the hot food hot if you get some of the other food. And so again, just thinking through all the different possibilities and customer flows and, ease of access to get the stuff that they love.
One of the things I was going to say on top of that, and Vivian obviously cut in here as well, is that like, we are hearing so much about like AI. And I mean like, there was something I heard like Y Combinator, all the number of applications, like 90% of them now are all like AI. Everything is AI. So even when I say that, it sounds kind of bizarre. But like the question I have for you here is like, there's so much data that's kind of coming your way now, like in the sense of like, when I hear you say like we got like difference between drive-throughs and lockers and keeping smoothies cold, keeping sandwiches warm, like innovation, test hub, how do you think about like even like disseminating that sort of information in a sort of like actionable or sort of practical kind of way?
Yeah, I think that's where the AI really comes in, and the analytics from the business intelligence, because you're right, you can't staff enough people to take all of that data. And I think that's why, in the restaurant industry, we haven't done anything. We've been collecting all sorts of data, for the last however many years, but we haven't done anything with it because we don't have the staff to go through it all. And really, with the advances in that, artificial intelligence and all the different platforms and, vendor partners and softwares out there, you can really drive it down to the insightful data that you can action on based on, all the various platforms. I think that's when, the CDPs are becoming really big in the last couple of years in the industry, where, they're helping to do that, where traditionally, restaurant operators didn't have that ability. So, as I mentioned, I love data. So being able to get it in an easy, actionable format really makes a difference.
Yeah, I find that when it comes to data, just because like at Landed, for example, we work with hundreds of brands, right? But there are different types of brands. There are quick serve, there are full serve, there's fast casual, there's like mom and pop, there's fine dining. So it really like runs the whole gamut. And when we look at our data, like there's so much of it, and there's qualitative and quantitative. And I think what we think a lot about is like, okay, how are we actually collecting the data? So of course we have the data, but messy data is probably more useless than not having data. Like it's harmful actually, because you can take insights from it. So a lot of what we think about is, okay, great, like we're collecting all this data, but before we decide to like take any insights from the data, like let's actually figure out like what the collection method of that data is, and like is this actually like useful. So for example, making sure that you're sampling the right time periods. So Carissa, you're probably thinking through, okay, drive-throughs, digital versus traditional. It's probably going to look super different on a weekend morning versus a weekday morning versus like a weekend night. You know, you're going to have different types of consumers. You're going to have like different types of like behaviors. You know, is it after a soccer game, or is it like you're getting your morning ice cream fix before work? Who knows? Who knows? But like having different types of consumers is like and how they're behaving is interesting. And something that that we talked about actually a few weeks ago is like, how are you tagging that data? Because you know, you might have your consumer information, but that person might be like the mom of an 8-year-old, and really the 8-year-old is the one who's driving all the decision making for whether or not they're coming and getting ice cream. But it looks like on your data that it's a, you know, 40-year-old woman who happens to love eating ice cream 4 times a week. And so like, so how do you guys think about like segmenting the data and like segmenting your customers to make sure that you're best like servicing them?
Yeah, so really it almost is easier than you would think it would be, because, you know, not just Friendlies, but probably 2/3 of our brands, it's the kids that are driving it. But
Yes.
I learned this the other day. It's not Gen Z anymore. We've now looped around the alphabet. It's Alpha generation is now like the 6, 7, 8-year-olds. And those are the ones that drive most of the decisions. So for us to, you know, kind of look through and segment a lot of that out, we're looking at what they're actually ordering, right? And being able to kind of build out from there. Specifically on the Friendlies and the Orange Leaf brand, we're looking at doing kids focused loyalty versus, you know, your traditional loyalty, because it is the kids that drive into those locations. So making, you know, a special program for them, whether it's a card or certain, you know, benefits that they get, not mom and dad.
That's really cool.
But then, yeah, so we're super excited with the stuff that we're working on.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I love hearing just the constant like innovation, the constant testing, and actually I've got a big beaming smile here because it makes me kind of feel like I need to go to Friendlies now. I need to go see all these things. And it's interesting because you mentioned something very interesting as well when we spoke last, which was, you know, about Pizza Jukebox in particular, which was something that very much caught my attention when it comes to like innovation in this space, you know, which like crosses the, what's the phrase I'm looking for? Like you know, it's almost like you've got your AI, but you've also got like your robots. And I mean, if you're ever going to talk about like innovation and testing, I think having AI and robots in one big mix is something super interesting.
Yes.
Do you want to tell the people listening here like what you guys are up to over there?
Yeah, for sure. So Pizza Jukebox is a new brand that we just launched last month. They've been open about a month now. And it's co-branded with one of our red mangoes. So it's in a actual Walmart, actually, our first location. So it's a red mango Pizza Jukebox. It's got a big glass window and a robot. You know, to your point, the robot makes your pizza. His name's Luigi. We did a poll and we voted. So we have Luigi. But it's engaging because it's eye-catching. You know, the people walking through can see it and they, you know, come in, and the robot can make their pizza, does a little dance when there's not a lot of stuff going on. But the whole point in the company that we're partnering with, Lab to Fab, it's collaborative, right? It's not, oh my gosh, robots are going to take everybody's jobs away. You know, it's built so that it fills in the gap, especially with the restaurant industry and the labor challenges we've been having over the last several years. You know, it allows the robot to do the consistent, let me just make this the same. It's going to be the same consistency, the same efficiencies. And then our actual people can talk to the customers, the guests that come in, and engage and, you know, do that. So, you know, it's kind of a combination. And, you know, robots have been around for several years now, but I think that as they're gaining more traction and efficiency, the cost has come down a lot. And so that's where I think, us, as well as a lot of other brands out there that, you can see in the news on a daily basis, are trying some of the robotics. It's a lot more effective and costly, or cost efficient now than it used to be. So I think that we're definitely going to see a lot more of that from us as well as other brands.
Yeah, I think that like robots are interesting, right? Because, we focus on helping people hire for workers. And so, of course, we want our candidates to find jobs that are like really great fits for them and that bring them fulfillment. But turnover has traditionally been like such a huge headache for the industry, right? 150% turnover, heard 200% turnover. I mean, those numbers are absolutely wild. Right? Because think about all the training that goes into that, like not just training for like how to manage the guests, but all the technology, because technology is such a big part of these restaurants too. I mean, it used to be you can come in, you can just like serve some food. I mean, serving some food is not so easy anymore. There's a lot going on behind the scenes. And so what we kind of hear is, and kind of my view of like how the industry is going from a labor perspective is, nobody necessarily wants to do like the super repetitive rote tasks, right? I mean, like no one finds enjoyment in that. And honestly, like if you're able to help people get more enjoyment out of their job, probably you're going to see less turnover, and you're probably going to get like more value out of each of your employees because they are like working on like more high leverage, like, value added things. Taking an employee from the back of house who's like basically, placing pepperonis on a pizza like for 8 hours a day and bringing them to the front of the house, and instead being able to, suggest recommendations, talk about, and even beyond, and this is like crazy, right? Talk about like, get to know your guests, right? Like actually have conversations with them outside of just ordering food, and what else do they want to like add to their order, all those types of things. So I think it's really cool, because I think that you will probably see like the experience at like QSRs and fast casuals evolve to not be like as like transactional. Like you don't have to be transactional when you have a person who's able to spend their time like really spending time with the guests and spending time with their team. And so I'm actually very excited for some of the like these innovations in robotics, even just like innovations in like automated fryers, automated griller, like these types of things, because then you can like, of course you still need a person to man like all the equipment, of course, but if you're able to take them and spend majority of their time on these like, relationship building things, brand building things, that's going to be how brands are going to be able to differentiate.
Yeah, absolutely. And, how cool is it to say your coworker is a robot? I mean,
my coworker is Luigi, who is
I think you had a great phrase for it last time we spoke. Did you not call your
cobot? Oh, yeah. Yes, cobot, collaborative robots. They're built and designed to work next to humans, not replace them.
All right, great stuff. Well, that's it, guys. This has been actually an insanely informative episode. I mean, I feel like I'm an expert in the technology of the restaurant space now. I'll speak for myself. But I'll sign off here. Carissa, thank you so much for coming on. We really, really appreciate it. Vivian, obviously, thanks for coming on as well. And thanks to our audience for coming today, and our future podcast listeners. Like I said, every restaurant has a story, and we're here to learn the playbooks that built the world's greatest restaurants and how you can apply them as a founder, owner, operator, and investor yourself. Thank you both very much for coming on. Thank you everyone for listening, and have a lovely, lovely week.